Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rakak Wadash. Double honor to the apostles and the elders, the elder bishops, the great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the elect scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, to the men on the highways and the byways that are pushing out this word, truth, and sincerity, and to the remnant men, women, and children of the elect. To you all, I say Shalom. My name is Ahyash, and I'm back with another lesson through the power and the spread of Yahawashi. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying. I wanted to, brother, in our chat sent this video, and I wanted to do a quick lesson on it going into the state of the U.S. dollar, where this country is heading, because we know prophecy states that, Babylon will basically collapse from within. Okay, and this man's power structure, when I say this man, I'm talking about Esau Edom, his power structure will collapse. The things that we've known for this place to, the things that we've come to know for this place to be the superpower that it is, these are the same things that we are going to watch and witness just absolutely collapse right in front of our eyes. And that's starting with the U.S. dollar and the currency, which is going to lead to absolute chaos in this world, man. Starting here in the shores of America, all right. So because there's a complacency here amongst these Americans. You know what I'm saying? There's a complacency, and there's this spirit of things will always find a way to be fixed, and things will always find a way to come back and be okay. But the spirit of prophecy says otherwise. All right. So I'm going to play this. And then I got some, I want to touch on some of the points that, they're making in this video. And I got some precepts lined up. All right.
Putin announced this week that Russia will begin using the Chinese yuan for international payments instead of the dollar. Saudi Arabia is also in talks with Beijing to do the same thing. Speaking of Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, they are in talks with Iran as well to consider an economic alliance with China and Russia. And they can even be joining the BRIC countries, which is an acronym for these countries here: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These countries all have emerging economies. So what happens if our economy and the U.S. dollar are no longer the world's dominant currency? Former Assistant Treasury Secretary and host of the Monica Crowley podcast, Monica Crowley, is here to weigh in. Monica, great to see you this morning. Let's start right there. What happens if these emerging economies move away from the U.S. dollar towards the Chinese yuan?
Well, good morning, Will. It's great to be with you. And it's really hard to overstate exactly how catastrophic the abandonment of the U.S. dollar would be as the world's global reserve currency. Look, since the end of World War II, the dollar has been the safe place to go, and it's been backed up by a couple of things. It originally was backed up by gold, but President Nixon took us off the gold standard, so there's no hard asset backing up the dollar anymore for the last 50 years. But also it's been backed up by the strength and economic power of the United States and the fact that oil has always been traded in dollars. If that were to end, that would mean the end of the U.S. dollar. Look, there's a perfect storm happening right now, Will. The world's reserve currency, being that, having that status has been a real privilege, but we've abused the privilege by wholly reckless monetary and fiscal policies over many years, certainly over the last couple of years, which has really devalued the dollar. On top of that, now you do have this perfect storm of Biden's weakness, his war on American domestic energy production, the Ukraine war, and as you point out, because of all of these things, we've got America's enemies led by China forming a new economic bloc. And all it would take at this point now, because we're at this pivotal moment, Will, is for Saudi Arabia, who has indicated that they're open to this, to say, you know what, we're going to be open to considering other currencies to trade in oil. If that were to happen, there would be a complete implosion of the global economic system, but certainly the American economic system. And if that were to happen, you'd be looking at sky-high inflation, just raging Weimar Republic kind of inflation. If you think inflation is bad now, just wait. But more importantly, we would lose our economic dominance and we would lose our superpower status.
Monica, the world's reserve currency, you said it's a privilege for the United States for the dollar to have been the world's currency. How does that relate to each individual American? How has that changed or impacted or improved our lives throughout the last several decades?
Yeah, I mean, it's given the United States incredible dominance in the world in terms of the economic system and in terms of trade. It's kept prices down. So whether it's energy prices, whether it's your food prices, the entire global economic system is reliant on the safe and secure dollar. But that is no longer true, again, because we've been printing money like crazy and devalued the power of the dollar and the value of the dollar. But on top of it now, again, oil is the critical linchpin of this. If Saudi Arabia decides to join with America's enemies here and start trading oil in different currencies, that is going to undermine the entire global economic system. And here at home, you know what it's going to mean for us? It's going to mean raging inflation, so much worse than anything we have ever experienced, Will. And I'll tell you, they're setting it up so that they can then come to the rescue by introducing central bank digital currencies. If they were to do that, and the United States already has a pilot program, that means the loss of your individual economic freedom, because the government will have total access and control of everything you buy and sell and the ability to turn it off like that.
Ominous warning. I hear you. Saudi Arabia is the tipping point. Oil trading in dollars is the tipping point.
All right. So, and there you have it, man. There you have it. This is all setting up for the collapse of the dollar, because we see these nations forming alliances. He mentioned at the top that Russia will begin using the Chinese yuan for international payments instead of the dollar. All right. And all these global alliances that are being formed, China, she mentioned China, Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia. These alliances are being formed to move away from the dollar, the dependency that these nations have had on the dollar for a very long time. All of that is now coming to an end. OK, they mentioned the world reserve currencies, which, you know, obviously we know the reserve currency allows for these nations to trade oil and dollars. And, these countries are moving away from that as well. You know what I mean? So we're watching the collapse of this place, because she mentioned that the U.S. has abused their privilege as being the U.S. reserve currency because they've been printing so much money. You know, when you print money, it devalues it. Right. And that's what she was going into. And these are the signs. These are the signs that we are to look for when it comes to Babylon the Great falling and Esau looking to, because all of these things are aligned with Esau coming down with great wrath, because he knows that it happened a short time. Because why? He's going to rush to try to implement that new world order system. Because the way this current system is set up, it's a dying system. Really, it's a system that just it can't hold up. You know, something that the elder, and I always mention this, something that the elder of our camp, Ahmawan Gabar, he said, I believe it might have been last year at some point, but he said the only thing that's holding up the U.S. dollar is people's belief in it. You know what I'm saying? Because this has no dollar. She has no value. She mentioned that they keep printing money, and this will lead to the inflation, some of the inflation that we see, the inflationary periods that we've seen. And then she mentioned raging inflation, which basically is another way to say hyperinflation. You know what I mean? So we're watching this happen in front of our eyes. Countries like Saudi Arabia, who's a major global oil producer, and it has a certain significance to the United States, because, and I looked this up, going back to like the 1940s with President Roosevelt, the United States and Saudi Arabia had what was called an oil for security deal in place, right? Which basically they signed a deal that would basically exchange oil for certain protections. All right. So they called it an oil for security deal. And with Saudi Arabia, at this point, with them going into these deals and forming these alliances with other powers like China, Russia, Iran, that whole idea for security is going to be less relevant, right? Because they can create those types of deals with other nations and get away from the dollar. You know what I'm saying? You can't just walk away from the dollar completely because, depending on how much business you're doing with the United States and how much you depend on how much you depend on the dollar as a nation, you don't want to just completely walk away because your economy can collapse, And we're in the midst of watching America lose their economic power. We're in the midst of watching this place losing its superpower status. And the introduction of the CBDCs, that's going to, he asked her a question about how does the CBDCs affect individuals, right? He asked her, how does the US dollar potentially no longer being the US reserve currency, how does that affect individuals and on a day-to-day basis, the average working citizen? And she mentioned the introduction of the CBDCs, which would result in a loss of any type of economic freedom that people have now, because the government, when you introduce CBDCs, it's a more controlled way to the government will have more control and more access to how transactions happen, right? It's more surveilled, it's more controlled, there's more access, and they have the ability to shut it off at any time. So she was talking about economic freedom and how that's going to be basically done away with. You know what I mean? Which is what? The MOTB, man, Revelation 13:16-18. That's really what, that's what this comes down to. That's what is going to all end up being. It's going to end up being the introduction of the micro C-HIP, and the world as it currently looks, it's going to be unrecognizable, especially the way business transactions and things go about it. You know what I mean? So let me get a couple precepts. I'm going to start James 5:3 in the NLT. James chapter 5 and verse 13. No, Slakia. 5:3, not 13, Slakia. James 5:3, it says, I'll read in the KJV and then the NLT. It says, your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and ye shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasures together for the last days. In the NLT, it says, your gold and silver have become worthless. The very wealth you were counting on will eat away like your flesh. So like they were going into in the video, the dollar has become worthless because it is printed so much. It is lent so much. It just doesn't have it. It's not backed by anything. Okay. It used to be under the gold standard, but now it's just not backed by anything at all. So it's become worthless. It says, this treasure you have accumulated will stand as evidence against you on the day of judgment. Okay. So, because when the day of judgment happens, I mean, all bets are off. All bets are off. There's not even going to be anything. Money is not going to be something that people are even remotely have to look towards when it comes to safety, protection, survival. That's not even going to be anything that's even worth anything at all, right? When the day of judgment comes, pursuant to Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 4, it reads, riches profit not in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivereth from death. Okay, so this is a spiritual matter that's happening. Okay, and it's a spiritual matter in the sense that this is prophecy. Okay, and only those who have received the spirit of truth will understand prophecy, will have the actual understanding, which is why in Isaiah 33:6 it says what? It says wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times, right? And wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times and strength of salvation. The fear of the Lord Yahawashi is his treasure. So this is a spiritual matter, what's happening, because these are the signs. These are the prophecies that Yahawashi told us to look forward to, And in that day, your riches are not going to profit you anything. You're not going to be able to possess anything that's going to save you from the destruction, from the day of the Lord. Right? Only the wisdom and the knowledge that is given now. Right? This is why we rehearse in the righteous acts. This is why the scriptures say, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. So that in that time, where all hell breaks loose and all bets are off, guess what? The wisdom and knowledge of Yahweh will keep us stable. We're going to know what's happening. We're not going to have to guess. We're not going to guess why is this happening. Why can't I go to the store and get this? Why is there no food on the shelves? Why is, the government so involved? Why is there martial law? Why is all hell breaking loose? We're not going to wonder that thing, because we're currently in the moment, in the spirit of prophecy, preparing for these things to take place, So taking heed to this warning is at the utmost, is the priority. All right, this is paramount above all things at this time, right? Because that's the only thing you're going to have. The fear of the Lord is his treasure. We fear Yahweh Shemel Shah. We fear the judgments. And we treasure that because we're going to beg and plead to Yahweh Shemel Shah to deliver us, to keep us a part of not keep us a part of the elect, but allow us to be a part of the elect. All right, because we feel like we are, but we don't know. Okay? Those that endure to the end shall be saved. So it's about endurance. We see guys fall out all the time, and we don't have any plans to do so. But hey, man, our plans aren't even plans. You know what I'm saying? It's about Yahweh. It's about the will of Yahweh Shemel Shai. Like I said, we feel like the elect because we're doing the work. And I think most importantly, brothers are sincere. When you sincere and you fear and trust the name of Yahweh Shemel Shai, and you want the will of the Lord to be done, hey man, you're gonna feel good about your chances, and we feel good about our chances. All right. So the wisdom and knowledge that's given to us at this point, this is what we're holding on to. All right. Let me stick in Isaiah so I can go back. Isaiah 24, because again, once that dollar collapses and this word is going to be only good for toilet paper. All right, and wipe the sweat off your brow, because the majority of people in this world are going to be sweating when all hell breaks loose. Isaiah 24:10 says, the city of confusion is broken down, every house is shut up, that no man may come in. All right, the city of confusion is broken down. It's going to be broken down because there's not going to be any stability there in here. There's not going to be any economic stability. There's not any spiritual stability. You're not going to have the job. You're not going to have a job. You're not going to have anything that's going to allow you to survive and get through all hell breakers. So Jacob trouble is going to be a time like never seen before on the earth. So the city of confusion shall be broken down. And the reason, and that's the whole thing. America is known as the city of confusion because that's all you see here in America. You see all these differences of opinion, differences of lifestyle, differences of way of life, all of this freedom, so-called freedom of choice. And you can be what you want, you can say who you want, you can serve who you want. This God is this name and this, that, and the third. It's just complete confusion, right? And the Lord has an issue with that, man. But it has to be dealt with. Okay? There's judgments for what is taking place in the earth. It's not just, live and let live. This place is being watched very, very closely. Okay, and for you so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, you better get your shit together. All right, it says, verse 11. Slakia, verse 10 again. The city of confusion. Let me read it in the NLT. The city writhes in chaos. Every home is locked out locked to keep out intruders. Because when all hell breaks loose, there's gonna be people running down. You read 2nd Esdras 15, 16, man, you see, man, all hell, it's gonna be chaos. All right. It's people gonna be running up in other people's house, people that you thought was family, friends. It's gonna be no holds barred. So every home is locked to keep out intruders. Why? Because they're gonna have starving children in their house. They're gonna be on their last can of whatever. No water in the crib, the faucet cut off. Who knows, man? All right. It says mobs, verse 11, mobs gather in the streets crying out for wine. Joy has turned to gloom. So the things that were joyous in this world, it's gonna be gloomy to people. It's gonna be hell. Right? The ease of convenience, being able to just go in your refrigerator or go to the grocery store and get what you need, and being able to pay for this, that's going to, at some point, that's going to be a thing of the past. All right. Joy has turned to gloom. Gladness has been banished from the land. It says the city is left in ruins. Its gates battered down. Right. So it's just going to be chaos. People are going to be, hey, man, when you're going to see the demon in people. Okay, scriptures say because of iniquity, the love of many shall wax cold. That psychosis that we're going to see throughout this land ain't going to be nothing nice. It ain't going to be nothing nice. It's going to be all hell breaking loose. You're going to see the demon in people. You know? What else we got? Just because I mentioned it, 2nd Esdras 6 and 22. At some point, this is what's going to happen. In 2nd Esdras 6 and 22, and suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. You know what I mean? And once this dollar collapses, these supply chains get interrupted. Ain't gonna be for no way for food and supplies, stuff to get to the shores. Ain't gonna be no truckers to get them to the. It's just gonna be fucking. It's gonna be messed up out here, man. All right. Because when the full storehouses are suddenly empty and you don't have access to food, man, there ain't no, and the scriptures talk about it, it is no worse death than famine, right? Because it's a suffering process. And people ain't going to want to die from famine. So to prevent that, people are going to go absolutely crazy out here. Right? Just a couple more precepts real quick. I'll just get this and close out. This is Revelation chapter 18. In verse 4, it says, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye Is this what I wanted? Verse 2. Start at verse 2. Revelation 18 and 2. And he cried mildly with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and her merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And that's some of what we was hearing in that video. All the business, all the trade, all the merchants, everything that America has partaken with these other nations. You know, these nations have waxed rich with this, with this nation. But at some point, the opposite is going to happen. Because with a falling currency, with a dying currency, the nations ain't gonna have nothing to do. They ain't gonna want to have anything to do with this nation. Okay, because America has made some of these nations, has saved their economies, and they've waxed rich with America through business, through trade deals, and all these different type of things. All right, but they can actually see this place falling. Right? Verse 4 says, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, that ye receive not of her plagues. Okay? For her sins have reached unto heaven, and the Most High have remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her according to her works. And the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. So, hey, there's a heavy, heavy judgment coming to Babylon the Great. We're watching it fall right in front of our eyes. There's a lot to be mindful of. There's a lot to watch. This is why the Lord has his men on the highways and the byways, watching news, watching prophecies, watching the signs. Okay? Being diligent about it. Okay? These are the times that we're in. We're watching the greatest empire in the history of the world fall right in front of us. All right? And there's nothing that's going to stop that. Okay? So I'm going to leave it there. Hope you were edified. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, Ba'ashem, Yahawashi, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash. Double honor to the apostles and the elders, the elder bishops, the great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the elect. Shalom.